Alright, here we go. This is an emergency broadcast from the Mayday, from the exact same place that I did the first 2-camera, no edits video that I've ever released on the Friendly Geordies podcast. By the way, this is who I do the podcast with. His name is Ali, just in case you're wondering. No, this is not Angry Aussie, the YouTube channel.
And I'm not Yilmaz either. People get disappointed. I do know Yilmaz, but I will never tell you who he is because Jordan will kill me.
Don't say that. Anyway, let's just pretend we didn't hear that. Let's talk about more important things than Yilmaz. Yes, I know, there are things like that, kids. And one of those is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Which, why do we have to say it in the Ibis budget motel that's near the airport in Melbourne again? I don't know how this keeps happening. I think it was because we were so busy today. And by busy, I mean we played laser tag for about 4 hours. But, in the meantime, we've been researching the Trans-Pacific Partnership because it looks like it's going to pass and be ratified in Australia. And this is the hardest thing I've ever said in this channel, but Labor's not perfect. That hurt my throat. That really hurt.
And it had to take me quite a bit of time to convince Jordan why this might not be the best idea. Surprise, surprise, it was hard to convince this man.
Can we stop living on the outskirts of Melbourne where, like, the African gangs are? Like, why is there... We're not going to be able to go to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
I'm used to crickets and bats, not sirens and people smacking each other with baseball bats.
I'm just happy there's light here. But anyways, Trans-Pacific Partnership, that's what we were talking about.
Yes, that's it.
So Jordan's been obsessed by it all 2 weeks now. And I've been researching on it as well because we were going to do...
Pretty much because when Labor ratified it, I was thinking for the last week, maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah, and I was explaining to him why it's not a good thing, which we will get into now, but somehow it managed to convince him for about 20 minutes that it is a good thing. What's your confusion? Explain how TPP affects anything, really.
What?
I mean, what's the point of TPP?
Oh, okay. God, I feel like I'm getting marked by a teacher and I'm the only person in the class and he's just going, go. And make it amusing. But yes, so pretty much, Trans-Pacific Partnership, for nobody who knows what it is the biggest trade deal in human history. That's right, it precedes the trade that we have with New Zealand. And so, it's well actually they're part of it as well. Did you know? Trump pulled out of it, and so everyone was always going, Trump's a racist, and he's got orange hair. Yeah, but he pulled out of one of the most evil concoctions in human history, so give him credit where credit's due, young Turks.
And it is not just a free trade agreement, because we have free trade agreements with pretty much every country that we will sign TPP with. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. The thing is, you could compare it more to a European Union rather than just a standard free trade agreement. So it's a shared regulation, laws, and on top of that, free trade. It's mostly about intellectual property, brand management. When I say brand in the sense that if you've got a brand, no one else would be able to steal that brand. So that's more than just trade. That's intellectual property legislation.
That's 2/3 of the chapters.
That's 2/3 of the chapters.
This is a very Studio 10 setup where it goes, hi Moira, did you know that these bed sheets have magnets in them? It's trying to turn it into an infomercial.
No, but it's important because the main objective for them is that by securing intellectual property rights, they can increase investment. Because if companies that do not fear that their technology will be stolen by... Let's say there was a Australian startup that was investing into some AI technology that could potentially reap benefits in the future. They might be afraid that Vietnam would just rip off that technology. But by solidifying these...
Not that they would, they don't have a history of that with cheap DVDs.
Yeah, it's not China.
Which is the main point of it. Pretty much what they're trying to do is form a second Gondwana land so that they can beat China in land mass. No, but like, you know, obviously in terms of their trade. So, what's happening is because China's becoming so rich now, they're kind of changing the rules of trade internationally. And so I was thinking, and it's true, on a really big scale, the Trans-Pacific Partnership makes sense. We're talking major global league here, not about what's good for your back pocket, which is basically what Friendly Geordies is, a current affair for Gen Y. So, yeah, look, with China growing that fast, America, which is the reason that they started setting it up in the first place, but now they're out of it, and then Malcolm Turnbull was like, wait, I still like kissing ass. And so he tried to get it to start up again, right? And the reason that they're trying to do that is because China is changing the way that trade happens around the world. They're trying to rewrite the rules that America set up after World War II. And so the Trans-Pacific Partnership, you know what it is? It's basically the Peter Dutton of international trade. It's just some really burly conservative guy going, no, I don't like change.
That's one way to put it, yeah. It's also a competition for China's One Belt, One Road initiative, which is their version of TPP.
So it's a huge international shifting policy that we're talking about here. It's a really big, complicated 600-page document that we didn't read. We just read the highlights. Because obviously, we're not lawyers, and this is all made by corporate lawyers. This is the scary thing about it. Most of this was made by 600 corporate lawyers behind closed doors for about half a decade, and then they just go to prime ministers and say, does this sound about good? And then they wouldn't read it either and just go, yeah, sure, just give me the dossier. And so they looked at the dot points and they went, increased GDP, sold. And then they signed it off. The scary points about the Trans-Pacific Partnership is the ISDS clause. Now, what does that mean? I don't even know what it stands for. Do you? International, no.
It means testing? Is that what is it?
No, that's second point. Don't get me ruffled, Ali.
Okay.
I'm stressed with my...
I don't even know why I'm in this
Good Morning
video.
Australia mug.
At maybe 12 p.m.
Yeah. Wakey. It's the new 6 a.m. So what we've got is, in the ISDS clause, pretty much what happens is they can sue governments when they change their laws. Think about that. So if Australia says, we don't like trees getting chopped down in this region, but there's like some company from Mexico that goes, but we make all of our taco stains from the yes. Those goddamn mucho hat pinata smackers can then sue us. They could sue the government because they changed something that might affect their profit. And the way that they sue them is not by going through our courts either. They'll go to an international tribunal where there will be a judge, prosecutor and defense attorney that change positions like it's a game of musical chairs. It's the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. They just go, change places, and then the judge becomes the defense prosecution. Becomes the defense lawyer, and then the prosecutor becomes the judge. And they just keep switching around. That's what the court that they're setting up is. It's insanity.
There's a precedent for this already. So, in World Trade Organization, they had a clause where two countries that have agreed to a free trade cannot legislate anything that might hamper business with the other country. So in Australia, when we were one of the first people to introduce plain cigarette packaging, with just like no branding at all.
Yeah, that vomit green color.
And I think it was.
And man, that didn't help. Still smoke.
But the thing is, it actually, if you look at the statistics, it did help. Like surprisingly, it helps. And what I think it was Philip Morris, one of the tobacco companies, that sued the Australian government for introducing those plain packaging because it was hampering their trade with Australia. So they used that legislation or that clause within the World Trade Organization legislation to sue Australian government that was enacting a law for its own people. The thing is, eventually they lost the case because that clause didn't have any teeth in it. What the TPP would do is make it a lot easier for them to actually win cases like that.
Right. And you know what else they've included in it? Because Labor has been holding up that agreement. So this is the thing. So for all the bashing that I get online about this, still got to defend them even when I'm saying that they're doing the wrong thing. That's just my way. But they were holding it up under the Rudd-Gillard years. Otherwise it would have been signed years ago. But the Labor Party was the only party in the world that refused to sign off on this agreement. And it's because of their experience with Philip Morris. And so the corporate lawyers went, okay, fine. We'll have the exact same ISDS clause, but cigarette companies can't sue you. And then modern Labour seems to think, well, I don't see how that could backfire.
Yeah, which is not the point, though. It doesn't matter if it's cigarette companies or not. It's the... It's the
precedent.
It's the principle itself. So... And to be fair, like while you were forcing me to do some of the research, most of Labour, like at least all of Labour left, is still very against the TPP.
This was the other thing. In the caucus meeting, there was a slim majority that voted against ratifying the TPP, but they just overrode it. The absolute peak of the Labour Party just went and signed off on it anyway, even though it's part of the Labour Party's constitution. In their last conference, it was signed off that they're not allowed to sign any trade agreements that have ISDS clauses and don't have labour market means testing. What's labour market means testing? Well, that's when countries can say, we want to build a skyscraper, it's going to be made with Vietnamese money. And usually, you know, the government just says, yeah, that's fine, but you have to use Australian builders. Now they can just go, but Vietnamese builders are cheaper. And they weld stuff together without wearing a mask and just put a cigarette in their mouth, and then when they're about to weld, they go keep going.
that's pretty crazy.
Crazy, but also boss.
Yeah, I
want them here. I want those guys here. I want the Vietnamese guys here. But not the goddamn Mexicans and New Zealanders.
Yeah, okay.
But I do want to see that happen, because that is the manliest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And I need to see it for myself.
But it is important for Australian employment, because if you can get anyone, at the moment, if you're trying to hire someone from overseas, you have to make sure that there's a complete absence of that skill in Australia. So I actually know a case like that. So, and this case is my dad, which is who got immigration here. I mean, I'll give you. So because he was a banker, initially his immigration was refused, and then eventually they pleaded a case that, and based on the fact that there's already a lot of bankers over here. What's special? Which is a very valid thing. You should have gone back. I shouldn't have been here. But he had experience.
The way that he rorted the system.
Yeah, no, he rorted the system. It was
Take note, Pakistanis that are constantly asking Ali at 7-Eleven, man, have you got citizenship yet? And then he goes, yes. And he goes, how? And then he just goes, I'm not telling.
I'm not. No, I said because I didn't
business is done.
It's my dad who did it.
Right,
so, and then, but like the thing was that they did that means testing, and according to those testing, he didn't qualify for citizenship. And then he had to prove that his... So he was... this is going to work well. He was an expert in Islamic banking, which was... and there was an absolute shortage. Like, there was almost no bankers over here who could perform that function. And hence, he got qualified for citizenship. If...
So niche.
Yeah, so niche. But if that testing goes away, then basically, you could get more bankers from anywhere. And they don't have to prove anything. They just have to say it's more efficient, and that's it. And the Australian government, who we vote for, will not be able to do anything about it.
Right. So, pretty much, this is the whole thing, is that everything in my channel until now is null void. In the next election, you need to vote for One Nation.
Hey. We didn't agree on this one.
Yeah, well, you know, sometimes you just got to make an executive decision. Like the Labour Party did. Because the other thing that happened as well, and this is, look, the other reason that the Labour Party was the only country in 12 of these nations, and a lot of these are developed nations, by the way, the reason why for so long that they weren't signing off on this deal, and you can criticise me all you like for constantly defending the Labour Party, but at the end of the day, think about how boss that is. That out of 12 nations, most of them developed, they were the only ones that were standing up to this huge international deal and saying, we're not going to sign this is a bad move for workers. And why is that? Because unions in this country are still somewhat powerful, as opposed to in Korea, where they just have Samsung presents a union, and then you go, okay, so it's a corporate union as opposed to an industry-wide union. Yes, it's a corrective. And how many members does it have for the biggest corporation in Korea by a mile that sells everything from candy to cars? 1 member. So it's a sham union. Get out. So the point is, because we have somewhat strong unions, which is why you need to join your union, because that's the thing that keeps the Labour Party honest, is the union power, where they can just say, if you go ahead with this, we're withdrawing money. Because in the Labour Party, again, it was a small majority that kind of just, in the last moments in a conference, just ambushed it and said, oh, by the way, we're going to do a TPP, and they said no, and they just went, oh, well, that guy went to the toilet, quickly, just vote for it, and they just voted for it when he's gone, right? But the unions heard about this and said, that's not how this is going to go down. And so they've been saying, we are going to withdraw funds from the Labour Party if it goes ahead with this. They're campaigning with members. They're lobbying the Labour Party. They're saying, you cannot sign this agreement as it currently stands. I think the crossbenchers have it right on this one, where they're saying that if you get rid of the ISDS clause and the means testing clause, which is the one where they can just let in, you know, entire foreign workers into the country, if you get rid of those 2 points, you can bear the brunt of the things of like, it's going to make medicine a little more expensive. And the reason I say that is because I'm not a pensioner, so eat more dog food, fuck you. But in general, I think that, look, the Trans-Pacific Partnership is not a good thing in the long term, but in the mid-term, as we were just talking about before, so there's going to be benefits from this. And like, it's going to go ahead. This is the thing. It's like when people always say like, Paul Keating turned this country into some neoliberal fantasy, and it was like, yeah, because the globe was shifting that way. This is how the world is turning now. They're just turning into these giant economic unions, so they can have bargaining power against the EU, say. So the EU is very powerful because it's a European Union. They're trying to make the same thing around here, and so we're not going to be able to shape that in exactly the same way that we want. And it's like the same thing in Brexit, where you can make a really solid argument for leaving EU. Leaving Great Britain. Come on, Scotland, second referendum, you can do it, boys. But yeah, like the whole world is going into these regional agreements, and the Trans-Pacific Partnership is actually kind of unfortunately a testing ground for it. But at the end of the day, it's gonna happen. It's probably a good idea to be a part of it, but like, you've got to get rid of the worst parts of it.
Look, that would definitely help. There's certain things about it that definitely are clearly, but I just think even in the long run, it's not particularly a good thing.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
Because I don't know. So this was like how I was trying to explain it to Jordan as well. So let's say Vietnam is really good at making towels.
They are.
And they are, or like, I don't know if they are, but like...
Well, I've seen one towel from Vietnam and it did the job. Well, I'm not still wet, so...
Yeah. So what this would allow is for Vietnam to get a lot more contracts. Most of the contracts within the TPP regions would go to Vietnam, so they would get an economic boost. That's why they would be interested in signing it, because all of a sudden their growth would increase by a couple of percentage points, because these... Like, you know, they've tripled their contracts in a matter of 6 months. But then this is a specialization. Eventually, a country like Australia that might be better at, let's say, some sort of surgical equipment will end up making that. The thing is, towels are much cheaper than medical equipment, which in the long run will mean that Vietnam will kind of stay poor, because they're going to only make towels.
Yeah, but here's my counter argument to that, Ali.
What?
We ain't Vietnam.
Yeah, alright. Like, it is better for developed countries.
This is the thing about these trade deals, is that they're very unfair on the developing world, and, you know, that really sucks to be them, and next time I'm there, I'm still gonna bargain really hard for 10 cents to get a cheaper DVD.
Yeah, well...
But, like, look, ideally I wouldn't sign the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But then again, like, this is what, it's very confusing the more and more you look into it. But the thing that is like crystal clear is that you do not sign it with the ISDS clause. You do not give corporations the power to sue governments. It completely destroys the idea of sovereignty. Alex Jones was right. We're entering the prison planet. And so, as a result of that, Donald Trump is mad. He is. That is the best thing he has done in his administration, by a mile. He's put a real spanner in the works of it. He's made it much less appealing, but still, the Australian government is going ahead with it. The difference is, again, there is huge resistance within the Labor Party to stop it from happening. So this is where you come in, right? And this is why we had to do this as an emergency and everyone stopped paying attention because they've just gone, hang on a second, he's not dressed as a bogan. So they've signed off.
He's got a wog with him, so there you go. I'm here for the entertainment.
This guy with glasses and like a very adult beard sitting there just being like, now for that, no more silly business. He's the Muslim dad. From the original, yeah, he is. He's turning into that. As soon as this gets turned off, this is why I'm keeping it going for so long. I'm going to get hit with a belt. But, look, what you need to do, first of all, definitely join your union. That is the reason that has stalled the Trans-Pacific Partnership from being signed as it is because Australia has somewhat powerful unions and we need to maintain that, especially because Gen Y is only signing up 5% of them. That's not enough. We're going to be like America in a few years where it's like the Democrats are their version of the Labor Party, but they're worse than the Liberal Party. I'll still fight for them because they're still better than the Republicans, which is basically the Taliban, but instead of Islam, we like Christianity. But what you need to do is that, and then I'm going to put a petition at the bottom that is by the ACTU. You need to sign that to show that the public is aware that this is happening and that you need to stick to your own goddamn conference agreements that you wrote in it. The Labor Party actually said that they're not going to sign the TPP with these clauses in it. And that would make it a way better trade deal for everyone concerned. Because the other thing that's also good about the Trans-Pacific Partnership that I didn't realise as well, and I think that that's probably because they're just trying to lock it in so they don't naturally form unions that are good themselves, but countries like Vietnam that don't have unions, which is why you have guys there that are just like, okay, so like Miss Love, who also does the podcast with us, start listening to it by the way, friend of Geordie's podcast, there's all these bamboo shoots instead of scaffolding. Yeah. Their scaffolding is bamboo. So essentially they're the orangutan from the Jungle Book. They just swing from branch to branch without a harness on, blow-torching things, and then like Miss Love was driving past it was 3 AM, and they say, they work on that 24 hours a day, and he said, what do they do for sleep? They just sleep on the top there, and then they foam and kick them when it's time to wake up. So them having unions is probably a good idea. And the Trans-Pacific Partnership does force these countries to put in unions of some descript.
Yeah, but there's a reason why...
they have one member, like Korea.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason why Korea has one member union, because they also have to do it. But they don't have the limit.
One's better than none.
One's better than nothing. So if there's a
requirement... united.
If there's a requirement for you to have a union, it could also just be a sham union as well.
Which is what they'll end up doing. So look, the point is it's a terrible deal.
Yeah. But what's even worse is the two clauses that you've mentioned.
And these can be rectified. Because, look, the other thing, the reason that this is happening is because Labour right, after Paul Keating deregulated the market, they've just always had this idea in their head that any free trade is good because it's worked for us in the past. And the unions and the left faction of the Labor Party has always been against it and just been like, no, keep the tariffs at 70%, in fact increase them to 85%. I don't care that the cars just get dismantled when you're driving around them, and essentially the cars that Australia makes are those cars in Fred Flintstone. In fact, they're better in Fred Flintstone than they are here. Doesn't matter, Aussie jobs. But the thing is, at the end of the day, it actually did make Australia a wealthier place 30 years down the track. You can empirically prove that. But there becomes a point where things become too deregulated, and that was the finesse of the 80s Keating government, was they knew the point where it was like, that's enough. And we're getting to that point now where it's kind of like the same as the US with their free trade agreements with Mexico and Canada, where it's just, it's not good anymore, it's just bad. And so, look, yes, it's going to increase growth, it's going to increase growth by nothing. But again, like as Ali was saying, nothing increases growth in Australia because it's already developed. So where do you go from there?
Yeah, and also
we're in that stage in SimCity where you got to over 300,000 people.
Yeah, and also a little bit of an increase in a developed in our GDP is actually a lot of money because our GDP is quite big, and also we're not a developing country like India where we can aim at a 7-8% growth rate. Like for us, 2-3% is mad. Like it's really, really good. We can't go in those double digits, and that 2% is a huge amount of money for a country that is 22 million people, right? Because and that's the other thing. The reason why labor rights, they're not crazy. They also have a reason why they think it's good for them, in the sense that they don't see any other way for growth. And also, by the way, they're getting intense pressure from the U.S. I know Trump has withdrawn from it, but I also tell you one thing: once Trump leaves, they're going to get back into it. Because I don't know if you remember this, in 2009, when Obama visited Australia under the Gillard government, he made an address to the parliament where he talked about this historic speech of pivot to Asia, where America has been too focused on the Middle East, and now they're moving the pivot to Asia, which basically in code means to counter China. And TPP is a stepping stone for that pivot to Asia. So no, Trump might withdraw from TPP because it's politically it's politically better for him to do so, but in the long run, US will come back into it, Republican or Democrat. These
yeah, which is why you always see in the mainstream media they're going, anyone but Trump would be better. And no, when it comes to the Republican playing field, first of all, Trump's hilarious. In fact, case closed. The video's over. That's it. That's the reason why. But
Trump 2020.
As you always said, man, I truly agree with you on this one, Ali. Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump. No one else.
I regret that, but
yeah, but I don't.
I
legitimately believe that
it's cosmically right, but it's morally wrong. Is the nutshell.
Yeah.
But anyways,
you got to think big sometimes, aren't they? And so yeah, look, Trump pulled out of it, so they're going to go back into it. But that's I honestly think that is the massive reason why the mainstream media is constantly pushing and going, it would be so much better if Mike Pence would be in. No, it wouldn't. It would be exactly the same under Mike Pence, except that he would sign the TPP. That's the reason why. This is how big and insidious this thing is, and how much pressure governments are getting to sign it. Obviously, it's the main drive behind it is that multinational corporations are able to pretty much influence these companies, and this is signing off the last skerricks of sovereignty. So that's the great thing about Joy to You, that they could go, all right, you think you could get away with 100% of what you want, big business? No, because every Australian worker paying their dues says that you can only get away with 98%.
Hey, that's 2% less, and for a developed country,
yeah, whatever,
like that's all right.
Chip away at the bricks, man.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for listening to this. If you didn't understand it, we don't either, really.
No, listen to the podcast. That's where I come in. I'm not sure why I'm here, but...
Now, you're just an advertiser. You're a billboard, essentially.
Yeah, I'm a billboard. I'm Clive Palmer. Make Australia great again. Make Australia listen to the Friendly Geordies podcast again. We're doing some good stuff there.
Yeah.